faciliter le retour au pays de tous les exilés politiques.
While taking his oath of office, the president and head of the transition committee in Gabon gave a powerful speech. He also outlined some revolutionary measures they will take in order to put Gabon on the path of progress. Before we see all these measures, let's hear the quotes. First, he quoted Jerry Rawlings, the man who led the revolution that changed Ghana in the 80s. He said, "When the people are crushed by their leaders with the complicity of the judges, it is up to the army to give the people back their freedom." This quote definitely resonates with Nigerians. They might be asking, how is General Nguema talking about Nigeria? What a coincidence, because a Nigerian court will in less than 24 hours deliver judgment on the presidential election dispute. They've taken almost 6 months to hear the petition. Their judgment tomorrow will decide the fate of millions of Nigerians who trooped out to cast their vote on February 25th, 2023. Unfortunately, that election was rigged, just like the one in Gabon, which of course caused the Gabonese military to strike and quickly remove Ali Bongo from power. His removal was timely because the announcement of results would have led to protests like it happened in 2016. And due to the high-handedness of the police, their actions led to casualties. So effectively, the timely intervention of the military in Gabon saved many lives. This is very thoughtful of the military leaders in Gabon. At least it shows they care for their people, unlike selfish politicians who are ready to plunge their country into unnecessary war just because they want to hold on to power. This is why the Nigerian judges must not collude with corrupt politicians to uphold a fraudulent election. If they do that in tomorrow's judgment, other parties can still challenge their decision at the Supreme Court, but it might still lead to protests, which might escalate. Nigeria's system is not like the French system that is practiced in Gabon, where the Constitutional Court validates the election results, and their decision is final. In Nigeria, the challengers of the election results first go to a panel of judges set up to hear the presidential election dispute. After they give their judgment, like they will do tomorrow, parties can now appeal to the Supreme Court, which is final.
Desmond Tutu disait, je cite, "Si vous êtes neutre devant une situation d'injustice, c'est que vous avez choisi d'être du côté de..."
Now, let's see General Nguema's second powerful quote. He cited the famous Desmond Tutu's quote, "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor." Yes, the Gabonese military could no longer stand by and watch the rights of Gabonese trampled on. Citizens are incarcerated for no reason. Elections became a one-man affair. One man still rigged the election and declared the results the way he wanted, and the Constitutional Court approved the illegality. The Gabonese military had to strike and remove politicians who have stopped upholding the laws of the land. This is called a revolution. This quote from Desmond Tutu also resonates with Nigerians because many highly placed individuals didn't condemn what happened on 25th February 2023. Some that spoke ended up taking sides with corrupt politicians and telling citizens and opposition to try again in another election. It is very easy for people to take this kind of position because of selfish reasons. They are not at the receiving end of the injustice. And looking at how quickly the Gabonese military intervened immediately the fraudulent elections were announced, it was an instant retribution. Justice served hot to Ali Bongo. Unlike the delay of justice currently going on in Nigeria, there's an intentional loophole in Nigeria's constitution that allows a corrupt election rigger to be sworn into office despite the election being challenged in court. The corrupt politician will now use his executive powers to intimidate the judges to deliver judgment in his favor. It's important to know that Nigeria's presidential election had more casualties than all the military coups that happened in Francophone countries the past 3 years. Let that sink in. When there are more casualties in a supposed democratic election compared to a military coup, then there's a massive problem. That's why the court should never reward people who declared war in an election and ended up rigging and stealing the votes. If they do that, that will mean the end of democracy in Nigeria. Now, let's see some of the things General Nguema pledged to quickly implement in Gabon. Let's start with the one he has done already. Freedom for this man, who is a researcher and president of a union in Gabon, definitely imprisoned by Ali Bongo. By pledging to grant amnesty to all prisoners of conscience and political prisoners, he has matched his words by actions. Revolutions bring sudden change, and this man will never forget this day. One thing that dictators share in common is the suppression of free speech. They can go to any length to prevent citizens from criticizing them. They can charge them to court on trumped-up charges. They always use excessive force against peaceful protesters. Imagine depriving citizens of basic needs and still prevent them from complaining about it, while they sit around in offices stealing the country blind. In essence, political prisoners are mostly those who couldn't go to exile to escape being imprisoned. Also, some are very brave and despite having the wherewithal to go on exile, choose to stay to fight at home. These types are motivated by deep patriotism. This brings us to the next one. He pledged to facilitate the return of exiled politicians. Yes, the first sign of dictatorship in any democracy is when they start arresting opposition figures on false charges to silence them, which ultimately leads them to voluntarily go on exile so that no one can silence them by sending them to prison. So the fact that Gabon under the Bongos practiced a strange version of democracy where free speech is not allowed is already a justification for the revolution. That's why you see citizens celebrating the military intervention. They can feel they have restored their freedom. This will definitely lead to many Gabonese in the diaspora returning to their country. People who know they have something to offer in terms of leadership, but were discouraged because of the lack of level playing field. No need contesting an election and wasting time or money when you know the election will be rigged. Next is a very important one to improve access to education. He promised to reinstate scholarship for secondary school students. It's a no-brainer. Going by the size of their population, Gabon can definitely afford it. Not just Gabon, many African countries can afford free education up to secondary school level. But it's a pity that most leaders are not good managers. They waste so much money on non-issues and frivolities. Money they can invest in important areas to uplift their people and create more jobs. They will rather waste the money. Imagine what Gabon could achieve if all the money they've seized so far were invested in education. He also announced that they will fund the national economy with local partners and local financial institutions. Most African countries always run to foreign markets to issue bonds and raise money. They don't know they are growing their economy instead of their own. Why not work with local financial institutions in your own country and solve the fundamental problem that makes their lending rates very high? This will go a long way in growing their economy because lower lending rates will definitely spur more borrowing from SMEs, which will ultimately lead to more jobs for the people. Now to the big one. Nguema announced that they will revise the conditions for granting Gabonese nationality.
Réviser les conditions d'attribution de la nationalité gabonaise.
This one is very important to many Gabonese because some people have been granted nationality under questionable circumstances. Sometimes they don't even spend up to 1 year before being granted nationality. In the beneficiaries' countries, an African can never be granted citizenship under a year of arrival. In most European countries, the minimum is 5 years to qualify for citizenship and then go through the rigorous process of obtaining the citizenship. Some of them conduct exams for potential citizens, of which if one fails the exams that test language proficiency and other things, the person will be denied the citizenship. In other words, the 5 years minimum isn't a guarantee that citizenship will be granted. It's a pity that African leaders are not patriotic. How can foreigners have more rights than your citizens? It's unconscionable that they don't reciprocate the treatment of their people by foreign countries. If most African leaders are patriotic, they must apply equal measure. When a country adopts a set of rules against your country, you must adopt the same against them. That's how it works. Because they believe Africans do come to their countries in larger numbers compared to them, they adopt all sorts of measures. Yes, it's their right to do that, but it's also the responsibility of other countries to return the favor. These corrupt African leaders can sell their country on a platter just because they want to hide their stolen wealth in foreign countries.